What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin, aka No Good Comics, and we are talking more Frank Miller Daredevil tonight. We've just been recently talking about 170 all the way up to 172. So tonight we are talking Daredevil 173 through 176. And of course, it's not just me when I say we; it is my good friend Darrell, aka Read Your Comics. Darrell, what's up, brother?
Happening? What's happening? Ready to dive into some
Chilling,
more
man.
Miller D?
Yeah, man. Thanks for jumping back in. I know we talked like we weren't sure when we were coming back exactly, and after we got off last show, I just like went on a binge craze. Like I literally read like 10 issues after. I couldn't put it down. So I appreciate you reading a couple of these, being able to jump in, and break down these four with me. I had a lot of fun with it. So
Yeah, we're definitely hitting the meat of like this run now.
for sure. Yeah. And then as I mentioned before, as we've been doing this now it's probably what, our fourth show, I think,
I think
doing
so.
Daredevil.
I think so. I think we did
Yeah.
two on the first trade, and this is our second one on this trade. So yeah,
Nice.
four altogether. I think.
Yeah, sweet. So before we go any further, of course, this time around, we wanted to bring on a special guest with us, and it's somebody who has basically been here the entire time. He's been hanging out in the chat each time that we've been here, and I know he is a diehard Daredevil fan himself. So it's, of course, my good friend Paul, aka Back to Back Issues. What up, Paul?
Gentlemen, what's going on? Good evening.
Chilling, man. Nice Yankee hat, brother.
Yeah, we're still in it.
I know. I got tickets to the game this Saturday.
Good, nice. Man.
Yeah,
it's too bad about Dominguez though.
Oh, dude, it killed me. I'm like, at least I get to see the kid,
And he was mashing too, man.
He
came up swinging, but.
Well, thanks for taking time to be with us, man. I know you're a big fan of this run, especially, and yeah, man. So so I'm looking to dive into it. For anyone watching right now, first and foremost, thanks for hanging out. If you are not following Darrell and Paul, make sure you do so. I put their information in the description below. Quick hello to the chat. I see my man Kevin hanging out. Entropy and Comics. Good to see you, Kevin. Appreciate you swinging by as always. So yeah, we're talking. We're gonna do this a little differently than before. We're gonna talk about Daredevil 173. We'll do a little bit of a breakdown there. We'll move forward into each, but I'm going to run through like just a quick synopsis of the issue, and then we'll go on from there. And of course, we got the pages set up here thanks to Darrell. Darrell, love the setup, man. I was telling my wife before, I'm like, yeah, I gotta get the camera overhead and all that stuff. Cool. Basically, I'm gonna run through this now, and then I'll pass it to you guys. Get your thoughts on that, and just let me know what you think. If there's certain moments that you want to talk about, or whatever, we'll kind of get into it. So first one up, and actually, I know, and Paul, I know you had your copies there. I don't know, Darrell, if you have your physical copies.
Yes, I don't have those.
You're rolling with the trade. But we got our four here. So these are the ones that we'll be breaking down tonight. We'll start off with 173. Some classic.
This is when I feel like the art though started transitioning to more heavy with the Jansen than so much Miller.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about 173. So essentially, the way this stuff opens up is Matt Murdock is. He's planning to meet up with his client, Melvin Potter, who we've been learning a little bit about, aka the Gladiator, right? We've had some pretty wild reads so far with him and things that he's gone through, and we know he's been dealing with some mental health issues, and essentially he's trying to defend him, Matt, and believing that he's not this bad guy. He's got some mental health situations that he can work out. So he wants to have his back. So basically he's about to meet up with him in front of their store or in front of their shop. And when he does, there's this couple that's walking down the street. They get attacked by this goon, this guy that with a mask on, creepy, tall dude, chokes out the dude, slaps the girl. He's got some sort of women issue of some sort. He says that you're misbehaving, or you're, what does he say? He says bad girl, shouldn't have screamed, and he slaps her. And Daredevil like picks this up as he's like walking down this other alley, turns into Daredevil, runs over. Of course, it's too late. The guy escapes, and then he lands. He sees the two bodies laying there. He wants to go after the guy, but he doesn't. Instead, he stays to help them. And as he does that, the cops show up while the client Melvin shows up, and at the same time, the cops think that it's Melvin that's the one that's been doing all the attacking. It turns out the descriptions and everything that people have witnessed, it seems like Melvin's the guy that actually did this, even though we, the reader, know we think that it wasn't him. And so from this whole mistake, basically Daredevil, Matt Murdock goes back, tries to check in with him while he's in jail now, Melvin, and he's got his assistant with him, Becky. Becky has apparently had a situation with her with Melvin back in the day. She faints when she sees him. Later, Matt Murdock pulls her aside, says, "Becky, why'd you faint? Like, it's Melvin. What's wrong?" And she goes and admits and shares that she had this history where Melvin had done the same thing to her. He attacked her and beat her up almost to death, and put her into the wheelchair that she's in today. And Matt is almost furious with her at first because he's like, "Why didn't you say so? Like, why didn't you call the cops? Like, you work for me, you work for the lawyers. Like, you should, stick by the law, stick by the system. What's wrong with you?" Like, and kind of blames her for like any other potential, injuries that or any other attacks that this guy may have done. And yet she's like, "I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I didn't want to, So she has this whole thing. She tells him to go away. Then Daredevil's like convinced, I got to find out who's really doing this. So he goes, looking for them basically all through the city. Can't find them. Ends up running back into. There's this whole side thing with Foggy. We'll talk about that afterwards. But apparently Foggy's not at all being himself. He's not showing up to work. He's not being a good husband. All this stuff. Life's kind of going downhill. So he ends up running back into. Matt Murdock ends up running back into. Melvin, who is considering putting on the mask. He talks him out of it, says, "You shouldn't. Like, let me find out who this real killer is. I know it's not you." And the real killer makes his move, essentially attacking Melvin's girl. What, Darrell?
Social worker.
Social worker. That's right.
Yeah.
So social worker to Melvin. He attacks her, does the same thing, slaps her, says, "You've been a bad girl," all this stuff. And Daredevil essentially tracks this guy down, finds him at a bar that's really his bar, meaning all the goons around him are all on his side. And as he approaches this guy, everybody stands up and has this guy's back. And they get into this big bar brawl, which I think we've seen. I feel like every other issue's been a bar brawl of some sort. It's been great. So this all goes down. And Daredevil gets himself in a situation where he almost gets the crap beat out of him. He's losing essentially, and he thinks about Becky. He thinks about how helpless she felt in her time, and that kind of gives him this inspiration to like fight back. And he ends up doing so. And long story short, he ends up taking out this bad guy, brings him to justice, and it turns out they even hold the picture you have up there on the top right, that it turns out it isn't Melvin. It's another guy that looks just like him, going by the name Michael Reese, who's arrested. It says Melvin Potter cleared of assault rap. And everything's like cleared up now. This whole time it's been like this doppelganger. And the ending here, and it's a strong one, I think, that the way that this ends is when he goes back to Becky, his assistant, and says, "Look, Becky, some things went down. Good news is we caught this guy. The bad news is we don't have enough to necessarily put him away. But if you're willing to do the testimony that you had told me, if you're willing to do that in front of a courtroom, even though I know it's scarring, even though I know it's 3 years old and you don't want to bring it up again, you might have this opportunity to actually put this guy away for good so that he doesn't hurt anybody else." But he's like, "That's up to you." And he basically leaves her to her and these epic scenes of her just like sitting near the phone, like, and I'm reading this digitally, so I'm getting each little panel, little by little, as she ponders, like, am I going to call in or not? And she does, and it just ends with her saying, "Get me the police." I thought that was like a really strong ending to what is a nice buttoned up story overall. So there's my spiel. And for anybody who hadn't read it, hopefully that kind of guides you through some of this. Obviously, I skipped some major parts and stuff, but I wanted to get the general idea across. So, Darrell, I'm going to pass it to you first. What did you think of this issue? And was there, something that stood out to you that you wanted to bring up from earlier?
I think the stuff with the assistant, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
I think that stuff, Becky, is very poignant even by today's standards. To think that this came out in 1981, because you've got more or less, she's a sexual assault victim,
right?
And but was too scared to like say anything, like to like come out. Yeah, because I mean that's like the stigma that women have for that kind of thing, and you really think about like when this was written and like they're writing a story about that, and it's like it really wasn't even talked about in that way until really the last like 5-6 years or so,
Right. Yep. Yeah, I absolutely. Paul, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, it's obviously he's pretty much way ahead of his time, Miller. You know, he wasn't afraid to tackle, you know, maybe what would be considered like a off limit topic of a touchy subject for a comic book. You know, he was at that point. I mean, nowadays that would, you know, probably in every other month would have some issue with that. But the thing that really caught me off guard was the actual killer was the Gimp from Pulp Fiction.
Yo, so that's what I kept thinking as I was reading this. I meant to say that. Yeah, dude. It's like real. It's creepy, right, man? Like
no, but Miller, it's actually a great job of like setting it up, some suspense. You almost do think maybe it's Melvin. You know, you don't really,
right?
You know, the way it constructs it, like when he's looking at his, it's like right before, I think he's like assaulting a woman. And then it skips to like Melvin, I think, holding his helmet and looking at it. And he's like conflicted over, you know, so it definitely sets it up to be like the switch, you know, that, you know, aha moment at the end, you know, or whatever. It's good read, man. Solid. Single issue too, you know, again, not like there's some continuing themes in the background, but that issue, you could read it just as is. It's great story, just as it is.
Totally. Quick hello to the chat. I see a couple people hanging out. Nigel in the chat. What's going on, brother?
What's good, brother?
My man Gore Vidal also hanging out with us. Good to see you, Gore. He says, I don't think we get enough Elektra in these issues. This one for sure.
This one,
this one.
Agreed. Some of the ones that follow, I think we get some.
Get a good bit later on.
Yeah. My man Steve Hip Hops and me in the
chat up,
as
Steve?
Well.
Steve, what's going on, brother?
Good to see you, man. So yeah, if you're just joining, we're talking 173 right now from the Daredevil run from Volume 1. What any thoughts here on what's going on with Foggy right now, and maybe, you know, without spoiling with what comes up next, but like what were your guys' thoughts? And again, for me, this is my first time reading through it, you know, a couple weeks ago. I'm like really confused with like why he's being the way he is. And I mean, I guess that's how he wants us to think, right, Frank, as he's writing this. But it just seems so random. Like he's like, and so outlandish that he's like destroying his marriage. You know,
that he just had.
yeah, right. Like, it's like fresh, and like he's really, you know, throwing his whole life away, his friendship away, his the business aspect of it, like all this stuff. Meanwhile, Matt, he's in court and he's like trying to buy more time. Like we get this in a couple issues where he's just like, you know, can we, you know, postpone this again? And the lady's like, all right, are you kidding me? Like again, like how many times we're going to postpone this thing? But he's like in need of his partner because his partner's good at this particular aspect of, you know, what it is that they need to do in the courtroom. And I don't know, did it seem like random to you, or like, you know, what did you guys think of this?
I agree. I thought it came on like kind of sudden, even though it's been a while since I read those earlier issues, but I do remember it's like he just got married, like maybe 4 or 5 issues before all this. And it did seem kind of like very sudden, and for him to go to the extreme of like he's acting funny, not there, it's like there wasn't really any build up to like he's been acting funny for a few issues. It's all of a sudden like he's like gone. Like
like he's like, get out, you know, like like, you know, yelling at when he's at his house talking to his wife, or you know, when Matt's talking to his wife, he's like, you can get out, man.
Yeah, it seemed a little like forced. It's like kind of wedged in there, like like you said, it was kind of just sudden. Like there was really no kind of build up to it. It seemed out of left field. Like he did that month was like, you know what, he came up with this idea for Foggy, and he was just like, I'm just gonna go with it. I know previous issues don't allude to this, but I'm just gonna go with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And you're right, because I think like he's like just trying to add this subtle side story. Essentially, this is I think what his goal was ultimately. But yeah, like I mean, we get a full page of that where that page right there where he's just like, you know,
just get out.
Yeah, he's got the thumb and everything.
Get out.
Yeah. I like that page to the left. The layout of that, him taking up that whole page. His legs kind of come down into the next scene.
Yeah,
I like
feel
how
like
the leg goes into that panel.
Yeah, I feel like that image is the one they used on the there's a a variant cover of Daredevil 600. It's like a 1 in 500 or a 1 in 1,000 or something. But they use a Miller Daredevil image, and I almost feel like that's it. I'll have to dig my book out and match it up at some point. But
it's funny how they repurpose that interior art into covers.
I know, I'm always conflicted when they do those. Like nowadays, they do covers with like the old repurposed art, because I'm sure the artists don't get nothing for it. Or maybe they do, but my assumption is they don't. And it's like,
I doubt they do.
But at the same time, as a Miller fan, I'm going to buy any cover, even all these. Oh, you probably can't see behind me. Even all these recent ones that people keep talking crap about.
It's just the Wolverine one. I thought the other ones were pretty good.
Actually, Justin, did you pick up Daredevil 1 this week?
I did. Yeah, I didn't read it yet, but I got it here.
I picked up the Miller cover of that, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't read it yet either, actually.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. Ahmed, I like him.
Yeah.
I got you, Gore. I got you. So the one thing too with that page there, Darrell, underneath, I like that he goes out. Like it's just like a quick cameo or a quick set of scenes, but he just goes out. He's like, all right, I'm gonna go try to find this killer. And like they do it pretty well in four panels where he beats up a guy in an alley, says, where's this guy? Show something else. Who, trying to find who else could do this. And then it's him at the bottom just chilling on this, the sunset or whatever. It says nothing. Not even a lead. That's just his life. He beats people up, gets information, and then he goes
destroys Josie's and then nothing.
Yeah, right. Gives a visit to Turk once in a while, anything else with this? I mean, ultimately, I know this doesn't really connect to some of the things that we're about to get into. We don't get Kingpin or anything like that yet, but I felt personally that this was a really strong issue, and I think more so just the topics that it carried. Getting everything the scene with Becky. I love just how it ended. Like we didn't need to see it be resolved. All we needed was to see her pick up the phone and say, "Get me the police." Like she decided to she wanted to be strong. She wanted to do what she felt was right at that time, and and help with the system by being a testimony. I just thought it had like a powerful message. And like you said, Paul, like this is definitely something you could just, jump right into, have a ton of entertainment. There's a ton of action. I mean, I kind of ran through it quick, but there's a lot of great bar scenes at the end were pretty powerful.
Yeah, especially some of these, fight scenes and stuff in here.
Yeah. Like him getting beat up at the end, like everybody stands up and they basically all have this guy's back. This guy, his name's Mikey, they call him Mikey, and they got daggers out, tables they flip over. And he goes, "Hey, somebody's messing with Mikey," and they all come around as Daredevil's got him up by the shirt or whatever. And he, he tries to take him on, but he definitely struggles. They get a lot of punches in. Oh, and then they're pouring beer on him. Like I thought, yeah. Like, and I think that was really trying to hit that feeling of being helpless. That feeling of not being in any sort of control, and yet you're awake. And again, similar to what Becky had dealt with.
One thing, this whole scene though, where the Gimp goes to attack Miss Betty.
Oh yeah.
I thought this scene was just. I mean, this was really intense, and I read these with the kids too, and they were like pretty taken. They were worried about this girl, and she holds her own. I guess where she works with like kind of psychos all the time, she is like prepared. She like blasts him with the fire hydrant, has a knife like ready, and stabs him. I mean, she holds her own as best she can. She doesn't go down. She doesn't go down like just as soon as he snaps that lock. It's not like she just like collapses.
Right.
And really holds him off just long enough for Daredevil to get there.
Yeah, I like how everybody else in the top corner, they're like, "Hey, someone broke in!" Like it's in an apartment.
Right. The neighbors.
So yeah, it's like all these neighbors like kind of show up,
and
which is kind of crazy that he'd be willing to do that, especially in an apartment building where everybody can hear, like, I don't know. That was,
New York in the 80s.
Yeah. It's crazy times.
It's kind of funny though that when he's in the bar there, he's got like his mask on, but like a hat and like a leather coat over it or something.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, just kind of a weird get up to have a hat and stuff on.
Like you said, like Pulp Fiction all the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if well, I think he is, right? Tarantino's probably a comic fan or was at one point in life, I'm guessing.
Probably.
Yeah. I like how Daredevil, he's like his face is a little beat up when he goes to speak to Becky at the end after the bar fight to just kind of keep it like,
Yep.
He's the most like one of anyway, like human of superhero. So when he gets in a fight, he's gonna be bruised and cut and beat up. He's just a regular guy.
Yep.
Which is cool. Like, just keep it like consistent, I guess.
Agreed. Anything else here with this? Are you guys ready to go into 174?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Unless you got something else, Paul.
No, I'm good.
Yeah,
174 is a good issue.
Dude, this is what a great cover. Green pops. You get an odd team up here just from the cover. It goes Daredevil, Elektra, and the Gladiator. ... Fighting an army of assassins. Like, come on, that's gonna grab anybody's attention right away.
Miller definitely had a soft spot for the Gladiator. So.
Yeah.
Even intertwines him into Born Again, and actually the issue right before. Born
does he?
Starts, 225. He's pretty much dedicated to Melvin.
I find myself liking a lot of the Melvin issues, at least in this era. I don't know. I haven't read like his first appearance, like all the earlier stuff, but like, from Darrell, from what we had picked up from whatever, I think it was like 167 or whatever that issue was. I had fun with that issue. I mean, there's some serious moments, but it's also wacky and, and again, he clearly, he's struggling with certain things that, I guess we'll get into later, but,
it was funny though, in this issue we just read, that thinking back to that issue that you just mentioned at the museum, when he fought him at the museum. And I guess after that fight, they just decided to take that costume and put it right back up in the museum. Because that's where Matt was talking to him, where he had the mask.
That's right. He's back there.
Thinking about it. And he's like, I went back to the museum because I know the costume's there.
You would think after something so dangerous had happened with that costume that they would retire it.
This one's going in the basement.
We're not. Clearly, this guy's going to come back for it at some point. Let's not give him any motivation to come back here. All right. So we're talking 174 and that awesome green cover. And we get some, as they describe here, an army of assassins. So it starts out basically Elektra, who actually I don't even know if it notes where she is located initially, but she's after a bounty, and she's off on her own at this point, and she's going after this guy Alfonso de Chanto or something. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. Right as she's about to get to this guy, someone else kills him on the bike. And she tracks down, basically follows back to who this was. Turns out it was the Hand, and she's very familiar with the Hand, as she's been brought up by the Hand, and that's how she learned how to fight and everything else. So as she's spying on them, looking into the window, turns out they're like, good job, you killed this guy. Next up on your list, you have to go after Matt Murdock, and specifically Matt Murdock, not Daredevil. Which I thought was interesting, and you get that cool burning, like him lighting the picture on fire as the flame takes out the image, and right then and there she decides, okay, I'm flying to New York City, and I'm going to try to stop this, and that's where we get this intro of the assassination of Matt Murdock. So of course it kind of gives you this little scene with again, as we talked about with the courtroom stuff. He's still continuing to try to buy more time now with Melvin and what he was initially in jail for and everything. So that's going on, and Matt comes home. He ends up being attacked by where we get to see the Hand, essentially, which I was trying to think, did we see the Hand earlier, Darrell, or am I getting
I don't think they were.
No, this is their first appearance, actually. This issue.
Oh, this book is okay, so that makes sense. So so they show up in his apartment and essentially attack him. He, for the most part, he holds his own. He does, as we learn, as he kill. I don't know if we want to use the word kill, but he takes one out and one falls. He dissolves before anything happens to him, which was really interesting. Definitely got to go back to that moment. And meanwhile, he goes in the other room and notices that another one's been taken out, and so that he's been getting help from somebody else. He doesn't know who. We know it's Elektra. She's standing, looking down at the rooftop from across the way. Meanwhile, we have Kingpin that shows up here, which again, haven't seen him in a little bit. He's being brought into everything with this guy who he basically explains his situation of wanting to get Daredevil. Daredevil, he says Daredevil's been demonstrating interest in his lawyer and his client. So I've gone through a surrogate to have a commissioned ninja to slay them both. This is what he's essentially paying off. And he's showing that he's trying to get the two sides to basically fight each other. That's like his as he talks about, he says that is the secret to power. He goes to pit your enemies against one another, remaining all the while untouched. So a little bit of classiness from Kingpin, being the mobster that he is and knows how to stay clean. So on the flip side, we get that little glimpse of Foggy and Matt, which we'll get into more of that. They essentially make up, and we find out why Foggy's been acting weird this entire time. We'll go back to that. Meanwhile, they clear everything up, but as they are, there's a bomb that goes off because the Hand is again attempting to attack them while they're in their actual office, Murdoch's office, and the bomb goes off. This plays a big role because we learn right afterwards Murdoch wakes up in the hospital and he doesn't have his radar. Now, to me, and I'm new at this, and we'll get into more detail in a bit, but I've never really got to the point where reading in this era where he doesn't have his radar. So this is like definitely obviously it's not good, and I'm curious to see how he handles himself, even though he doesn't have the radar. Heather's by his side. She's always there. It's his girl. And I feel like, he just kind of kicks her off to the side every time. But so he's just so concerned. She's like, are you okay? Don't worry. Everything's gonna be all right. And he's just like, my radar's gone. This is bad. I got to get back out there. Meanwhile, Elektra is going to go help Team Up with Melvin. This is the whole thing and I forgot to mention, this is what Kingpin was essentially planning for initially, was to take out, not only Matt Murdock, but his client. So she wants to go save him. She crashes the truck, gives him his mask, and says, if you want to live, like, you got to help fight your way out of this with me. And so they get into this awesome fight scene. Daredevil, who doesn't have his radar senses, shows up anyways, also helps out. Meanwhile, he doesn't even realize that Elektra's not there. He ultimately thinks it's just Melvin, or he doesn't know what else is going on. He can't quite gather all the different things going on, but he's trying his best to fight off everybody he can between the three of them. And this is where we get this cover scene where they're all actually, fighting together, which I love that you wouldn't think that Gladiator are fighting with alongside them. They all fight together, and they scare off the Hand. Three of them retreat, the rest dissolve. Right. He talks to Melvin. Melvin says, oh, good thing that girl was here with us too. And Matt's like, wait, there was a girl with this? Like, I thought it was just us. And he's like, wait, could that have been Elektra? So that's leading him to thinking, like, what is Elektra doing back here in New York City? And then we get towards these last two pages, as you have there, where these three go back to their master and apologize. But they're like, yeah, but we thought you'd want us to come back because we were thinking that you'd want this information. Elektra's back. She's messing things up. And this guy's just like, you're not paid to think. You're paid strictly to kill, or in this case, be killed. I love those lines that he says at the end. And then they bring in this dominant other ninja that's 2 or 3 times their size, rocking the pink robe, and and he just one swoosh, takes all three, and all they can do is like basically say it. They're like, remarkable, 3 of us with but a single stroke, and they all die. They all just fall, and then it ends with him getting his next assignment from the master, saying that it is this woman Elektra, and you see that the new flame with her head on fire. So wild issue. So again, doing my whole kind of run through first, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Paul, I'll start with you first. What do you think of this issue overall, and is there some things that you wanted to note here that I went through?
I mean, again, it's a solid, like, it continues themes, but I feel like if you could just read this issue and you kind of get it all, I mean, it's basically these ninjas are trying to kill Matt Murdock, and he's being assisted by his long lost love that he has no idea about. But I mean, the art in it is just spectacular. I love the way Miller always drew Matt's like house with like the masks on the walls. It looks like it's always dark in there. He always has the shades like drawn, and it's, I don't know, that noir kind of look that, Miller's very fond of, obviously. But I just the way he draws them in his house, when he's fighting those first ninjas, and they're just like dissolving. He doesn't realize he's getting help, but
right.
Why would he turn the lights on?
Yeah, right. I mean, but it's just like, like to see it depicted that way. Like it's just, I don't know. It's just cool. It's always like blue and like dark, and like the masks on the wall looks just kind of gothic or something. Yeah, it's cool.
Totally.
But the Hand, obviously, they're pretty big. They obviously became big players, other characters. I mean, initially they were very Daredevil centric, but
then Wolverine, of course.
Yeah, obviously Miller. Which was a pretty quick turnaround that I'm thinking of. These issues are from '81.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and the Wolverine limited series was '82, I think.
I think it was '82.
Yeah,
so pretty much within a year, he is.
Yep.
He was definitely. I mean, obviously, he was like big into ninjas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Japanese stuff in
Japanese
general.
samurai cult ninja stuff, definitely. So
right.
But I think it's a great issue. The art's great. I love the panel, even like that page, just the thin rectangular panels.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
He kind of just packs everything you would kind of need to see. He's definitely, as a writer, but because he's drawing it as well, he kind of can basically convey like almost like perfectly what he's trying to get with, like a writer and artist dynamic. If it's not the same guy, there's always going to be like interpretation as the artist. I think you want me to draw it, what I mean? Whereas he could literally just draw it the way he sees it and wanted it to look. So I think that was, other than like him and Byrne at this era, there really wasn't any. I can't really think of any other writer artists that were like, big time like these guys were. So
yeah, Walt wasn't really. Simonson.
Yeah, that's
really
true.
I mean, he comes a little later though, doesn't he?
Yeah, a couple years later. But he was the same. But man, so great, man. Simonson, Miller, Byrne. Wow, Marvel was killing it in the early '80s. But
they were.
Yeah, even that panel too, when he's standing in court, like like the big assassination of Matt Murdock, and then I don't know, man, his panel and like page layout was incredible.
I like that too, because it was almost like a newspaper too, in a sense. Because I mean, you get that full white background, but the title right up top,
headline, front page headline, above the fold.
Quick hello to chat in the chat, Chet in the chat, and also Bueller in the chat. What's going on, Bueller? Good to see you, brother.
What's going on, gentlemen?
Good to see you. Gore said Miller was in his early 20s when he wrote these stories. Impressive work.
Yeah,
wow,
it is crazy.
Darrell, what'd you think about this issue?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's just cool to have like Elektra back in it, and like you're kind of getting her background of what happened to her between her like introduction issue when we see her in college versus when she comes back, and knowing like she like was involved with the hand, but like turned on him, and it's like the lighting and stuff on panels like this. She's like in the water with the light coming this way, and even on her face. Like to me, I'll just sit there and stare at it,
Yeah, it's great.
And this panel, like, there's nothing in this panel really, but it's like you're getting this plane, so it's like it's like a transition. It's so simple, and it's like execution that nobody else really did stuff like that.
Still kind of like conveys movement or something.
Yeah,
like it just makes it,
because it doesn't even really look like clouds. It just it's like bubbles, like. But that stuff, and I like the colors on this cityscape here too.
Oh, that stood out big time. Yeah, they do that a lot. I mean, I've seen that even in I think we got a little bit of that in the Wolverine, the miniseries. Kind of those blurs.
When he's in Japan. Definitely.
It's really well done.
I do wonder if the ninjas fading into dust was like a code thing that was his workaround. The code or something, that's comics code, was to have them like vaporize, because that way they could kill them. They could like kill them left and right, but like
that's a good point. I kind of forgot about that. I mean, having to write around the code, kind of.
Yeah. And then also where's the truck stuff? Where the truck crashes.
What's up, Kenneth? Good to see you, brother.
Is this Stan and Jack? It's not. They don't call each other Stan and Jack, but look at them.
Oh man,
yeah, no doubt.
Good call.
Definitely. I never even noticed that.
They don't call each other by that name, but you got this guy. This looks like Jack Kirby smoking a cigar for sure, and this looks like a little mustached Stanley.
Definitely. Yeah, he would have called him Stanley.
I did not catch that. Gore says Elektra is a force of nature. Totally agree. Can we talk about the whole Foggy thing now? This is like we find out in this issue that Foggy's issue was not Matt at all, but it was himself. And essentially he felt that he was letting Matt down because of money issues that had to do with keeping their storefront open, essentially. And he felt that he let him down, that he was taking smaller jobs that wasn't paying enough. He couldn't afford to, keep it going. Basically, he even says, like, Matt, you took care of me. You carried us through college, and getting us to here. And I guess he just felt like, he wanted to do his part and that he was not doing it or not doing it well enough. But the odd thing to me, again, is I feel like it's a huge overreaction. I mean, to throw away your friendship and your marriage and to like really go opposite of everything, all because of something you felt like you didn't. Like, I'm sure people can relate to some degree, but not so dramatic that you're going to throw away, a friendship or your marriage or your career, even
your business partner and everything.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Matt is in court and he's like working a big case and he needs Foggy and he's trying to buy more time. And I don't, if I was Matt, I'd be like, dude, if you just came here and helped me close this case, like, we'll make the money for that. Don't, I don't know. So it was just it just felt like a lot to get the character of Foggy to really lose it the way he did and especially in such a short period of time. I think the combination of all that is what kind of really threw me for a loop. That was like, I don't know if we really needed, any of that. That's just kind of how I took it.
Adding extra drama, I guess, to it, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know because they do resolve it so fast.
It's like 2 issues.
Yeah,
right.
It's like
they're really like a total of like 4 pages altogether.
It's like less than 4 pages. Yeah. And they hug it out. It's like, I get they have this nice moment, and maybe that's what he was trying to build up, is like to just show the human side of this friendship and partnership that they have. I think maybe might have been the goal that Frank was trying to get across. But again, I think it was just very much in a short, forced kind of way, ultimately.
But it does set up this whole sequence where the hand is coming after Matt, and they go inside, and it's like the way the panels are set up across these 3 pages with these like 4 in the middle, and then you got the outside, like this is happening inside, this is happening outside, and like Elektra's fighting them. Yeah, it's happening simultaneously, this is going on right outside the window while they're doing this. But Matt's radar sense, I guess, isn't picking it up, even though he still has his hearing and stuff. But maybe he's so like involved with Foggy in this moment, But it's like all the panels are set up, and this is actually like, well, it's still 4 panels, but he likes, the explosion makes this one a little bigger,
right? And that's where he loses that's the big loss of radar there.
I like how they make these issues too. Like, she's very conflicted, Elektra. She doesn't want to necessarily help him or have these like feelings towards him, but she obviously like can't help herself. Obviously, if you go back to the issues when she was introduced, I mean, she was basically kicking his ass and almost killing him, basically. So these issues back to the beginning of this issue, when she overhears that he's the target to be assassinated, she goes to America. She's like, she travels to New York. So she, like, you can tell she's, you can like just imagine she's conflicted about it, but she doesn't want, or maybe she's just like, no one else will kill him but me or something, like no one else's hands will end his life but mine. But she's, it's like quite a transition, which is again, like you were saying before just now, it's like, it just makes it more like human or more like real. Like we would have like reactions like that,
Right. Yeah. Like she clearly has some feelings, I think, and she's torn. I mean, they were in love. They did have a relationship that was, what seemed to be fairly deep in what he had portrayed, Frank. So yeah, I mean, ultimately I think, it's just the conflict of that. And then, I mean, the more drama adds on to it a little later as we get into some of these other issues. Gore says, conflicted heart, like Faulkner said, makes a great story. It makes for a great story. There you go.
That's true.
Yeah. Anything else with what do you guys think of Heather? Is it me or like I hate her. But I feel like she's always so bad. So I don't know her from earlier stuff, and I know she's played a role even previous, but like from what I know her so far, she tries to be there. Like and I know we're gonna get in a little more with Heather later, but like I felt bad. Like he wakes up in the hospital, no one else is there but her, and she's like, are you all right? Like everything will be okay. He's like, my radar, can't talk right now. My radar, I gotta go out. I gotta go.
Yeah, no, he's definitely an asshole to her most of the time. And when ultimately what happens to her happens, it's almost not surprising because he was so like just neglected her and just abused her,
and I think that's what made her, might have made her attracted more to him. Like it's almost like something you can't have, and it's like, well, you want to even, I don't know. It's just like I feel bad.
Date a superhero, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
She's actually like, oh, your radar's done. Good, you don't have to be Daredevil anymore.
Right, opportunity. We can have a normal life now. Yep, that's true.
I do think pink is an interesting choice for this guy, but
you like how I called that out?
Is it Karigi? Is that him?
Karigi is the way I said it.
Like I think it's with a rolling R. Like
he's like a big 7-foot ninja,
that
and he's like the
more
one
sense.
that's like indestructible, right? Like you can't, something you have to be looking straight on to us. It's some weird thing to kill him, or I forget. Yeah, that's later on. It's like 10, 15 issues from now, but
yeah. Well, you guys want to jump into this next one because we got a little more with, especially with that character.
We got a hell of a splash panel right there. That's what we
have.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
I remember being quite fond of that in my youth.
So this is
pre-internet, guys, pre-internet.
Miller was sparking some young adolescent males discovering themselves.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's one of the best covers.
It really is. This is definitely a book that I recognized for a long time. Like even when I first decided, like, I'm going to start collecting Daredevil, I think this was one of the first books I bought. And I wouldn't mind getting even a nicer cover or a nicer copy because it's tough because this spine is like all black all the way down. So it's like kind of tricky, and at the same time, it's a white cover. So it's definitely tricky. I need to get the Mylar magic on this one. It's a little wrinkled bag there.
Poly bag.
I got to get rid of that bag there. Everything's getting the treatment. Okay, so let's dive. We'll dive into this one. Same thing, and then we'll discuss. So basically. Daredevil shows up while she's doing meditation. I don't care who you are. You don't sneak up on a woman and spy on her when she's doing meditation, especially when she's half naked in the way that she is there. I mean, and Daredevil's just like chilling with his hands in his pocket, like
doing like hot yoga or something.
Right. It's like, come on, man, like not knock first or something. I don't know. So yeah, we get a little like flirtation. He's basically there to find out like, why were you there that night? Why did you help Melvin? What are you doing back in New York? All this stuff. They have a brief moment. They almost come to kissing, and then she kicks him out a window and literally kicks, all the way out the window. And he's just like, she hates me. Meanwhile, we get a little bit of
Spider-Man.
She's gone. Meanwhile, we get a little flashback of Karigi, who they're again just kind of showing the power that he has and the assignment that he gets, that Elektra is next on his list. And this is because they have been dishonored because Elektra used to be part of the Hand, and we've learned, now that the Hand is not fond of that. If you leave us, like that's it, you're dead to us. So meanwhile, Daredevil ends up. Is this the? Oh yeah, great scenes here. So Daredevil ends up finding out that Foggy's about to be attacked by the Hand, or what looks to be the Hand. And you get this whole classic fight scene, and we'll go back to this because I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. But a great fight scene of a taxi cab ride that Foggy has no idea that there's these guys fighting, and Daredevil's on the roof the entire time. It's really funny. And then, of course, Elektra shows up, kind of helps out, and they get a lead together. They find out that it's this oddities store on Canal Street. And she actually hits him in the back of the head, takes the note, and wants to go to this oddities place on Canal Street to find out where the rest of the Hand is. Now, one thing about these bad guys after he took them out is that they didn't dissolve. So it kind of made this question mark of like, are these legit? Is this the Hand, or is this like some other team that has shown up? And if so, like, what are they doing here? So there's a little question off to the side that we'll get back to. Meanwhile, Foggy is now in court and doing his thing. And now he needs Matt to show up, and Matt's the one that's like running a little late, but it's for good reason. Foggy ends up, managing to hold off a little bit. Meanwhile, it shows Elektra. She's undercover. She goes to this place, and an all-out brawl, takes place here. Daredevil comes in. We get tons of action. Again, keep in mind, Daredevil doesn't have his radar from the last issue, the explosion throwing him off. But essentially, Elektra gets a one-on-one opportunity with Karigi. Now, she's heard a ton about this guy's like a legendary story of not being able to be killed. He's unstoppable. And it kind of proves it here. She stabs him twice in the stomach at one point, and he just rips them both out of his chest. So that is, one of the many moments in which he, again, basically doesn't die when you would think he would. And yet she still is able to hold her own, continue to fight. Daredevil's taking on these other ninjas who, again, we're not sure who's who. Now I think this is the Hand, right? And as we get towards this middling part, we see the Master show up, and he's enjoying every minute of this because he knows that Karigi, like, no one's matched for Karigi. And yet she manages to stab him again with this massive sword. Again, awesome action sequences. We'll go back through it in a little bit. Awesome close-ups. Matt ends up taking care of the rest of the team, or rest of the ninjas that he was fighting, and then runs back to her, which she ends up killing Karigi and the Master. The Master's laying by himself, and basically Matt's like, "Why did you do that? I'm gonna have to bring you in. Like, that's not okay. Like, no matter what, I understand we were on a team, we're fighting, trying to stop crime, whatever. But you murdered essentially someone who was like giving themselves up. This guy that's the Master of the Hand, and so clearly that's an issue for him." But he's so weak, he's so tired, he ends up collapsing from the battle, and that's just how much of a significance the Hand is, that he barely survived that, so much so that she could have left him for dead. Instead, she saves him, brings him back to the hospital, luckily, and we wrap up the issue with Heather again, who's waiting for him at the hospital. He remembers he has to be at the court. He goes to the court finally, and meanwhile, Foggy took care of the whole thing. He found this one loophole in the system, read a few words, showed something, and they won the whole case. Daredevil, Matt Murdock shows up, and basically this girl's like, "I can't believe you guys, you pretend that, your relationship's falling apart and that you're about to close, and it's all set up and yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to come back," So she's like angry because her being on the other side of the defense, but Foggy and Nelson, Foggy and Murdock end up, winning this case. And Matt doesn't quite know what's going on, but he's like, "All right, I'll go with it." And the last scene there, you get Kingpin, who his right hand guy comes and says, "Hey, it worked out. You got your two enemies together. The only problem is Daredevil didn't survive. I think the ultimate plan would have been for the two of the parties to essentially kill each other, and Daredevil, of course, still being alive." So he says, "We got to work on dealing with him," but Kingpin says, "Don't worry about it. It'll all, he says, "I shall deal with the Daredevil when it comes time," as he holds his cigarette in his hand like this. So again, that was a quick run through, but I skipped a lot of really epic stuff, I feel like. So I want to pass it back to you guys, and also a quick hello to Bill in the chat. Good to see you, brother. So I'm gonna throw it to you first, Darrell. What stood out to you in this issue?
Oh man, a lot.
It's a lot, right?
I think we got Elektra's return last issue, but this issue is really the one that you're like, wow, Elektra's just complete dominating. Like who said it a second ago? She's a force. I mean, she truly is
force in nature.
Yeah. And I mean, like Paul said, of course, this panel, like, I know when people post this book on Instagram, they always have to show this panel. Like it's like they show the cover, they always open it up. Even people that don't usually show the inside will open it up.
Right.
But even this panel, I think, is pretty seductive,
Yeah.
But I did find, like, because we were talking about how she's she's conflicted with, she's there to help him, but then, she's like, she hates me. She really hates me, So there's this weird back and forth, I feel like, that is developed a little odd. And then, of course, Matt still has his relationship with Heather. It's almost like Miller was trying to decide, does he want these two characters to be together, and what does he do with Heather? It's almost like he was still trying to figure that out. But yeah, I mean, and this page I think was weird because it was basically the same page that ended the last issue, almost exactly.
They almost took. Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, oh, is that supposed to be the recap? Because they almost took it exactly panel for panel.
Yeah, it's like this part changes, but basically you almost wonder. It's like, was he just needing an extra page? And
I could see them being behind, right? Maybe they're behind. They're like, oh, we forgot the recap page. Yeah, the deadline's up there. We forgot the recap page. Like, just copy the last one. Just throw it in there.
But all of this stuff with like the hand ninjas, like, running on wires with bow and arrows and stuff, and it does make me think of the Wolverine miniseries so much, because really I read that before I ever read any of this. So, I for the longest time I did associate the hand more with the Wolverine stuff before I ended up getting into Daredevil. But yeah, I like this scene that you were talking about a lot with the cab. That's a lot like the Elektra outside the office in the last issue.
Yes, I just like how oblivious he is to the whole thing, and yeah, they're just literally fighting. Like, he could practically have died. You see these claws that are right near his head, and he's just like talking to the cab driver about his
and the cab driver's just talking to him too. You'd think they'd hear the thump on the roof.
Right. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm an attorney. So funny. I figured you. Oh, he's like, are you? Oh, he's like, are you a bondsman? He's like, no, I'm a lawyer. He's like, oh, funny. I figured you for a bondsman. Guess you never know, he says.
Yeah.
He goes, I mean, to look at me, you wouldn't think I could have been brain surgeon or nuclear physicist. Like, they're just talking, and meanwhile, there's all these like swiping. He goes, sure, it's for sure. I'm a real smart guy, but who needs the hassle? You think I'd appreciate it if the world knew how smart I really am, huh? And he's like, that's for sure. And he's just looking out the window. That's for sure. It's great. Great scene.
But I'll pass it off to Paul and let him handle some of this action.
Yeah, Paul. It's actually funny you just mentioned it. Dad. Probably same thing. I'm sure I read the Wolverine miniseries before I read this. So
yeah,
I guess I didn't think of the time frame. I guess my introduction to Miller probably was that miniseries, not so much Daredevil. And even reading these, so these came out in 81. I probably didn't read these maybe to like 84 or so, maybe a little bit later. But as a kid of the 80s, I mean, we were all about ninjas. So, I mean, this was right in my wheelhouse, man, ninjas and stuff.
And this was probably right at the beginning of the ninja phase, I would say.
Probably,
81 was kind of early.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I'm looking at it like in terms of me discovering it. But yeah, true. He was kind of a little bit ahead of the ninja craze,
Yeah.
But definitely a force of nature. I mean, her battle with I'm a Karigi. He's basically this immortal giant ninja, and she basically kicks his ass. So
just stabs him multiple times.
Yeah, how skilled she is.
Right.
But just the pacing of the issue, kind of like it's like maybe it's like that's how comics were done back then. This is probably like a great example of it, but just in general, in contrast to kind of the way books started to be done later on, it's just such a contrast. I mean, you read these issues and it's like a great read. Everything's good. You kind of get everything you need. It's a lengthy read. Like, it's not like you're not going to read this issue in 3 minutes or 5 minutes like you kind of can with new books. So it's a little just a different feel, but it's nice to revisit it actually. So
yeah,
but yeah, the ninja battles are great. The splash again, but that splash panel reminds me of that panel you mentioned in the previous issue, the way the lighting is on it. You didn't really see like that kind of the way the light was portrayed like that, like in a lot of books, but actually you do with it. Must be a Miller thing, because now that I think of it, in the Wolverine miniseries, there's I don't know if it's when he's hanging outside like that big like lighted sign with Yukio on his back and all the arrows are going by him. I think it's the splash page for issue 2. That kind of has a little bit of like some weird, like the way they did the lighting on him looks pretty cool. And then he jumps off and it's like, there's like a million arrows, Miller always overdid the arrow thing a little bit, but no, this issue's cool. And I like the way it just, does move the story along a little bit as far as strengthening some of the bonds. And again, the conflicted nature of, she's saving him, but then she, more or less kicks him out a window, like, almost killing him. So it's like,
that was great.
She's definitely doesn't know which way she wants to go with that, I guess.
Classic flirtation, high school flirtation.
Yeah, right.
I've been through plenty of windows in my high school life, so
hits him in the back of the.
Well, so when did she? Was it in the earlier issues, or is it coming up where he gets caught in the bear trap? Was that in
that's coming up? Yeah, hasn't happened. Hasn't happened. What
like
did you guys?
A lot too. Okay. She hits him in the back of the head. And just the way it's because he's holding that card, and the way he goes, whoosh, and the transition into this panel.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's a,
you don't see that a lot.
The end of the battle where she's like, surely he would die if he, his wounds don't get bandaged, but then it shows him like he's obviously alive. So they don't show her helping him, but obviously she helped him.
Right. She had a decision she had to make there.
Yep.
That what was it? The other where she ends up actually a couple of things. So Darrell, go back a page. That left page there, the close up of Daredevil. Yeah, the face. I love how it zooms in. You get the bicep, and then next to it, and then it zooms in even more. Like the detail in that is stunning.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's probably one of my favorite moments. And then the page right next to it. Where she kills this guy, right? She kills the Jonin, as his name is. It says the Jonin died quickly, if not silently. The hand will hunt her no longer. She is free. So now she's killed him. She's not just killing people, right? She wants, she has her purpose, her reason. Mm-hmm. She knows she's being hunted by the hand at this point. So the only way to stop them from coming after her is to kill the Jonin. And so she does this, and of course right in front of Daredevil, he catches this as he's standing in the doorway, and obviously this is very much against what he believes in, as he would prefer her to let the law handle it. And so what are your guys' thoughts on that? I mean, I guess this is just a bigger question in general, but the idea of should she have let the law take care of it, or should she have done what she did here and killed the Jonin? I mean, I guess knowing how dangerous the hand is, maybe it's smarter to do what she did. But
I'm just thinking overall, her character, if this was prior her dad being killed, maybe she was in law school, so I mean I'm assuming at one point was a proponent of law and order, whereas now she's just cold and detached, and she is an assassin. So I don't think she
don't care at all now.
Yeah, she probably does. I mean, other than I guess anything as it involves Matt, she's maybe conflicted in certain situations and stuff. But I think overall, she at this point of her life and what she's been through, she's probably doesn't think twice about it. She's pretty much.
And she knows probably too that if she doesn't kill this guy, they're just going to keep coming and coming and coming.
In this case,
so for her own self-preservation,
Right. And how dangerous they are, especially.
Yeah, she kind of had no choice in this particular case.
Yeah. Gore had mentioned in the beginning, he said, in school, my peers called Elektra a slut for scenes like this. It made no sense to me. I thought they were idiots for thinking that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess just the idea of someone showing skin.
In her own home, working out or doing whatever.
She's it's private. She's meditating. Yeah, if anything, it's Daredevil being a creep.
Yeah,
That's true.
More so than anything. Like I was saying before, at least give her a courtesy knock. Hey, I'm about to come in here.
Peeping Matt.
Yeah. Classic Peeping Matt, as they called him. I thought there was a quote in here I wanted to point out, but I don't see it here. Maybe it's in another issue. Anything else here before we get into this last issue?
Just the Kingpin's plan worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't get rid of Daredevil, but he got, because his plan was to pit the ninjas against Daredevil. And
right.
At least the ninjas are gone.
Right. So yeah, and I forgot to wrap that up, but yeah. So essentially, he pays these other ninjas that are not the Hand to go and he puts a pin on them with the location to start up the war. That was his whole trick or whatever. And they kind of caught on a little bit because they're these guys didn't dissolve. Why? Something's up. They're not the Hand, but hey, we're gonna go check it out anyways because that's what they do. So, but yeah, no, that's a good point.
The buildup of the Kingpin again. The last show was the reintroduction of Kingpin, and since then we've only gotten these like single pages of him like behind the scenes,
true,
pulling the puppet strings.
It's like Thanos in the MCU. Just you get little glimpses.
Bit of a slow burn, like he kind of built it up, which is cool.
Yep. All right, let's get into this last one here, or at least last one for the evening, issue 176. And again, anybody watching the replay, appreciate you. People that are here right now, thanks for hanging out with us as we're reading and breaking down this Frank Miller Daredevil stuff. Let me bring that up on my screen here. So this issue, I bought this one a while back, $1.50 for this book.
Wow.
At least from Zap Comics. At least from Zap Comics. I mean, everything's cheaper at Zap. Again, got to throw some Mylar on that bad boy. All right, so we'll get into this last one. So I'll do same thing, just kind of run through this real quick. This was one of my favorites, just because the general concept of this whole story was to find his old mentor Stick, who to this point we don't know who that is. This is technically Stick's first appearance. I personally know him just because of the Daredevil Netflix series and things like that. But so we get into this whole evening. Again, starts out with a great showing of Karigi, who, as we thought was dead, as he has a sword all the way through him after being stabbed 2 other times and left for dead and buried. He rises and not only the guy's walking around with the sword all the way through him. He literally walks like through this whole trash compactor and through the hospital, goes to this church, knocks out a bunch of people, and essentially takes the sword out of him, and he's in this church while he does it. So really, really stunning, set of pages there. Meanwhile, we have Daredevil, who is completely torn with the fact that he still does not have his radar. And again, if you're joining late, he lost his radar 2 issues ago by the explosion, thanks to the Hand, who was trying to assassinate him and Foggy. So that explosion had ruptured something where he does not have his radar. And that is the very thing that sets him on this journey to say, hold on a second, let me find my old mentor, the one who taught me how to fight and be who I am today. Let me find Stick and see if he can help me snap out of this or regain my radar so that I can get back to doing what I do best. And again, we get Heather, who's like, Matt, come inside. It's raining. Let's maybe you're not meant to be Daredevil anymore. Maybe this is like your next chapter of your life. And all he can think of is that's my life. He's like, I need this radar. Like, I need to, and this is where he thinks of the idea. So he goes off to find Stick. He even jumps and almost misses the cliff. And she notices it, and she's so furious at first. He goes, man, he almost died, but he doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about me at all. He just leaves me alone here, just like Daddy did. She notes. She goes, all alone. She goes, Daddy issues. Yeah. So she goes, but he'll be killed on his own. And she starts to feel bad. She's like, he's the only man for me. And she ends up wanting to help. So she kind of, puts on clothes and goes after him wherever he's off to. He's going off to some bar or set of bars to ask around to find out where Stick is. Meanwhile, she sees that this is also going on, so she decides, all right, I'm going to go help Daredevil find Stick. So she's on the way. Then behind her, you got Karigi, who is now like, okay, I'm after this girl who almost killed me, Elektra, and I'm still set. That's my mission. Still, she killed my Jonin, my master. I'm going to take her out. So now we have this trail of people going after Matt, who's going after Stick. So I'm like that alone. I'm starting to it's a funny setup. It's great though. Then we get Turk Barrett, who we've been dabbling with for the past 8 to 10 issues, and he's really become one of my favorites because he's a great character. He's just a fun character. He never wins, but he thinks he has the upper hand half the time. So he's at the bar. He gets shocked when he sees Daredevil there. He almost drops himself. But his buddy Grotto ends up striking him in the back of the head, and no one ever lands a hand on Daredevil, not that easy at least. And so they drag him outside. He ends up escaping and climbing, getting away. But there's something that he noticed. He's like, something's wrong with Daredevil. You should have never been able to sneak up on him like that. So we're going to do something to that. He says we're going to do some hero hunting. So he thinks that this is an opportunity to take out Daredevil once and for all, even though he's tried to kill him now 8 times. Meanwhile, you get this scene where Heather, she's getting into some trouble, like dangerous. Like she's going to the bar by herself and around some guys that are not safe guys. And this guy, I think, is expecting something. She's like, "Hey, can you help me find Stick?" He's like, "Oh, I can help you. All right. Why don't you come back here with me and I'll help you." And he wants to get friendly. She pulls a gun out immediately. He's like, "Hey, my dad taught me how to use this. I will kill you. Either you're going to help me or you're not." And immediately she's like, "Sure, lady. Okay. Like, you got it." So now it's Heather and this dude continuing, to follow Matt. And then from here, you get this janitor who's just cleaning up at this conglomerate of electronics and what seems to be like futuristic robots and cybernetics. And he's complaining about his job and how one day he thinks it's going to be taken over by a robot, essentially. And meanwhile, Turk shows up with a gun of his own. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm here to get some equipment. We're going to borrow some things," because he's going hero hunting, right? Him and Grotto. So they're doing that off to the side. They're getting stuff so that they can continue their chase with Daredevil. Daredevil's still continuing to go around. As he asks these other two bozos, he starts to run off. One of them pulls a gun out to shoot Daredevil. And luckily, since Elektra's been staying by his side, she takes him out beforehand, stabs both of them, which is pretty wicked, and continues on to follow Daredevil. Karigi sees that, continues on to follow her, who's following Daredevil. And then we get to my favorite scene where this guy is brushing his teeth. What was his name? Pike. My man Pike here, brushing his teeth, complaining about something about losing money or whatever at a game of pool. And first thing first, he gets crashing through the window, Elektra, and she goes, "I'm looking for Stick." He goes, "I'm telling you nothing." And then she pulls out this dagger. He goes, Duke's Pool Hall, 9th Avenue, south of Houston. Gives it up immediately. She splits, goes right back through the same window slit that she broke in. Right afterwards, another crash. The wall comes through, and it's Turk, who's got this like robot, machine that he stole from this other place, and goes, "Turk," he goes, "I'm looking for," he goes, "Shut up, Pike. This suit's here. Don't worry about it. I'll rip your head off." He goes, "I'm looking for Turk." He gets the information. Then Daredevil breaks through. Same thing. All he says is Stick, and Daredevil goes, "Stick." And he goes, "Dukes." Love that scene. We'll go back to it. And then finally he's like, "All right, I'm getting out of here." He goes, "Got a cousin in Jersey. I'm going back to Jersey." And as he opens the door, you got Heather with the big dude that's like helping her out, and she's got a gun, and he's just like, "Dukes. They just go to Dukes." Clearly go to Dukes. They finally go to Dukes. They see this the pool hall. Stick is surrounded by a couple guys. It looks like he's in trouble. Daredevil, of course, comes in. At the same time, Heather comes in. There's a brawl that breaks out. Daredevil takes care of all of them. And, Stick's like, "Dude, I could have had it myself. But, whatever. Thanks." And as this is going on, Turk shows up, blasts through the wall, and they throw down because Turk's, again, going hero hunting. That doesn't work out. He gets knocked out. Daredevil saying sweet dreams. Meanwhile, this is a crazy issue. Meanwhile, Elektra is like right out the window and then sees a shining sword behind her. And of course, Karigi finally catches up to her and decides this is the time. I'm putting you down for good. So they start a fight on the outside. She continues to put up a fight. So much so she has to start a truck and run him off the dock. Like this crazy stuff, like knocks him off into the water. It explodes. There's fire and flames everywhere. Water. She's bleeding. She's sitting there. And then out of nowhere in the flames, as you see below me, he's crawling out of the water and out of the fire and still moving after being hit by a truck, after going into the water, after having a sword through him, half the issue, all this crazy stuff. And then out of nowhere, it takes just two quick moves. She grabs a sword, swipes that one more time, and it says, "God or demon, Karigi had a neck that was human enough." And from what we see here, he falls again to his death. And it says, "But what about Elektra?" And she's there left at the end, staring at the end of the dock. And all we know is that they finally find Stick. We don't even get to the rest of the story, and that picks up in the next one. But holy crap, guys! I was really excited to like throw that out there. Like this is just a wild issue.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Paul, I'll start with you. What did you think of the concept of this issue? And do you feel the same way? And what were some of your favorite parts?
Definitely a lot going on in this issue. I mean, it was cool that he kind of, in the midst of all that, oh, by the way, here's this majorly important character I'm going to retrofit in as part of Daredevil's origin. It's like, but it's like subtle. Like you don't think of it as you're reading. You're not like, wow, holy cow, this is the guy that trained him. Like you don't It just seems natural, like it just fit in or something. But yeah, it's pretty cool. These guys want to kick his ass. They think he's like hustling them or something, you know. It's the
right.
But yeah, I mean,
he kind of is.
Yeah, and he is. Is that and that's the Mauler armor, isn't it, from 167?
Yeah,
the one that Turk's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was wondering what the armor came from. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it looks like that Mauler suit that the guy had on. But I mean, great issue. I mean, obviously, you don't get really much of Stick's kind of backstory. He just kind of comes across as this old gruff guy he doesn't show it in this issue, but you know, seems like he's probably a badass. You know, like he doesn't really do much in this issue. Like you said, Matt kind of jumps in to fend those guys off. But I mean, it's great issue, great art. Again, I feel like this is where like the transition starting to I'm starting to look at it more as like Jansen art than Miller. I think Miller was probably just like breaking it down for the most part, but
he was at least doing the layouts.
Yeah, I actually like that image from the next issue. That's cool. But
that one.
Oh yeah.
That's when he shoots the arrows and he keeps. Then he finally, Anyway, that's next time.
The demon. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, again, it hits on all like the themes, right? Heather's kind of the helpless girlfriend. You know, he just pays her no mind and leaves. Like he's like, no, I gotta find my mentor. You know, I know it's middle of the night and it's pouring out, but and I don't have my radar sense. I'm kind of compromised, but I'm still gonna go out and do this. You know,
he's just going,
which inspires her. Yeah, which inspires her to kind of get way out of character and start visiting this seedy, shady place, and you know, so
dude, she holds her own, man.
she was packing heat, so
right.
Thankfully. But and poor Pike there, he kind of got disturbed in the midst of getting ready for bed or something, you know. That was kind of a rough night.
When I first saw those pages with Pike, I legit thought, because it's a close up of like brushing teeth, and you just see like kind of a bald head. I was like, is that Kingpin? Like, what? I thought they were bringing Kingpin in, and I was like, is that it? Is it that easy to break in on Kingpin? And why is his eyes so googly right now?
Yeah, he's kind of a goofy looking guy.
Station Bobby, what up, man?
So Bobby. So yeah, no, just again, man, just a great issue. And definitely a lot going on. I mean, you got your money's worth in this issue. Look at the panels. There's so many panels like per page. You know, it's like it's like looking at a Ditko page in the 60s. You know, it's like 9 or 12 panel, you know, grid panel. But
that one on the left is really sick. I like the Is that like the smoke or kind of coming up around him? Yeah, that's cool.
Miller, nobody could draw like that cityscape like Miller with like the water towers and the smoke and the steamy subway vents and stuff. I don't know. You can almost like feel it. Yeah, definitely brought that feel, and which is weird because it wasn't really in Daredevil before him, and no one's really managed to capture it since. You know, it's such a brief run on the character in the total scheme of things, but also like kind of set the tone for the character. Basically, I mean, it's you know, when you think of Daredevil, this is what you think of. No, as great as his run was, no one's thinking of Gene Cole and Daredevil. You know, they're thinking Miller. It's the definitive kind of the definitive take on him. And this is why great issues like this.
Right. Darrell, that scene there too, where he's lighting up the cigarette, another similar lighting effect, the way we had talked about from the last time that you see more of with Frank's art and stuff like that.
Definitely. So I read this with the kids last night.
Nice.
They died laughing at this.
Oh, nice.
They were like,
I bet.
They like Turk anyway. So when Turk showed up, they were all like laughing, like, "Oh, it's that guy again!" Like they knew he was going to be up to something. And they like it when he's with Grotto, and he's always like, "Shut up, Grotto!"
Yeah.
You know? But they were dying laughing at this. Like by the time he gets to the, you know, this part with Heather and them coming in, they were like, "Everybody's coming in and breaking in on this guy." They were dying laughing at it. And it's funny too, because it's like, he's brushing his teeth and she leaves. He's like, I'm gonna light a cigarette and just try to relax. And then Turk busts in. So then he pops some Alka-Seltzer because he probably has an ulcer. And then Daredevil comes crashing in. And he's like, forget it. I'm out of here. I'm just gonna leave.
I love where Daredevil's just like, or he says to Daredevil, he says, "Stick," and he's like, "Stick." He goes, "Dukes." That's all you get from that one panel.
It goes like more from like with Elektra, where he's like talking back to her, like, "I'm not telling you nothing," and you know, to Turk coming in. He's like, Turk, what are you doing? You tore up my wall. And then the Daredevil just Dukes or stick, Dukes. And then finally just Dukes.
Yeah, he's just like, he's had enough. He's like, Dukes, just go to Dukes. It's like the sixth person breaking in finally.
But I love that. And I love that Turk went through the trouble to get one of these suits, and Daredevil still just takes him out with like, he gets like a leg trip, and then one punch, and
a couple panels he's dispatched.
Yeah.
It says sweet dreams.
Good lettering too. But yeah, like Paul said, you definitely get your money's worth. I guess it was a 35-cent cover price back then. You definitely got 35 cents worth of.
Even at Justin's $1.50.
I was just gonna say mine costs $1.50. That's still pretty good.
Definitely got your money's worth.
Yeah.
Great cover. Yeah, it's even that splash is cool. So I mean, I'd almost like to do like a collection of, almost make like a video of just all the splash panels of each Miller issue. Because it's they probably would almost like tell a story a little bit. But they kind of just.
Like you kind of know exactly where you're at in that moment because you're, based on whichever, this is where this picks up or whatever, like that, especially Kriege, like coming back like that.
I guess this guy thought he was gonna he found this like sword and valuable sword or something. He didn't know it was attached to somebody.
Yeah, and you notice in the next page, he literally is walking around with the sword in him, like for several panels.
Yeah, and like this cop just tries to help, like, yo, man, you okay? You got a sword stuck in you. And he just smacks him away.
You got a dart in your neck. You got a fucking dart in your neck. So good. And then he finally
pulling it out.
I like how it's just a knockout white behind him there.
This reminds me, most people know that Ninja Turtles was inspired by Frank Miller's Daredevil, and this made me think of a scene with the Shredder emerging from the garbage or something.
Totally. Bobby
wants to see where this definitely inspired that.
Bobby said, I wonder who won that bike on the cover.
The Marvel had some unfortunate ads on their covers, probably none worse than the one on X-Men 137. What an epic issue and cover to ruin with this Toys R Us thing.
Gore says agree if only Gene Colan had the writing ability or had a talented writer working with him, he would have been brilliant. And Bobby's showing some love for Gene there.
I love the Gene Colan Daredevils, just to look through them, if nothing else. They are,
absolutely,
they are gorgeous.
Absolutely. What did you guys think of? I felt like, okay, so I kind of knew who Stick was, like I said, because of
the
Netflix
show
and stuff, but and even stuff that is touched on in the more modern stuff. But I like how this issue builds up the idea of this legendary mentor of his named Stick, and at least in my head, if I feel like, reading this for the first time, if I didn't know who he was, I feel like my mind would have been who is this masterful, ninja, big and strong and all this other stuff, that's what I would picture. And then you just see this guy who doesn't look like, he would be the mentor of, I just like that it was kind of misled in that way, or as you might assume that it's we're getting all these other ninjas. Why not? Why would he not be like this ninja or whatever? And meanwhile, he's hustling people in pool or whatever. He's like a pool shark instead.
Seems beneath him, but I guess.
Yeah.
It's funny though. So I guess I'm assuming I'd have to think when I first read this, I read them in not at the time they came out, but when I did get all these issues, I read them in order, not having any prior knowledge of Stick probably at that time. I probably read this issue and it didn't even impact me that much of who this guy was at that point, because he's barely in the issue and you don't really get much other than he's kind of some old gruff guy, and he apparently was Matt's teacher at some point, but he was so new and you never heard of him before. So it was kind of I don't remember this guy in any of the older. I'm looking through older issues and reprints and stuff I had.
Trying to find him. Yeah.
So it was I guess if I had known who he was as I read this the first time, I would have been oh yeah, this is Stick. This dude's a badass. I guess it would have maybe impacted me differently.
Right.
I kind of knew who he was when I finally read these. I don't know how, but So I wasn't really like taken aback by seeing him or anything for the first time.
Right.
But yeah, it would be interesting to put yourself in the shoes of like picking this off the rack in 1981 and having been read Daredevil for like a year or two prior, and then seeing this old man. I see Gore said it could have been Yoda, and I wonder if it is kind of like a little bit of Yoda inspiration, because that would have been before this, you know. Like because Yoda was like a surprise to see like the Jedi Master being this like old, small like character, you know.
Right.
So I mean, it's kind of the same thing in some ways.
Bobby says stick train Splinter. There you go. Could have happened. We got Double O in the chat. What's going on, brother? He says, have you guys checked out the IDW artist editions? Stunning stuff. I have not.
I would like to, though. They're pretty sweet.
Yeah, they're pricey, so and you got to get them when they come out, or else you miss out.
They're kind of exclusive, I think, or something.
I think you're right here, Gore. I think she was collecting those. Yeah. Anything else here for this? Trying to think if we missed anything else, or any other thoughts here.
I mean, I feel like this issue is like getting to the point where it's like this issue setting up the next issue. Like, like you could read this issue and just get it all, but at the same time, you're kind of left with like not a cliffhanger, but like, you know, like you need the next issue
going.
Yeah, to complete like kind of what's going on in this issue. You would need another issue, though, the next issue.
Right,
definitely.
You got a full episode, but there's still more story to tell.
And I feel like this is probably not one to jump into just because you see this ninja who's like half dead coming out. Like you would almost wonder like who is this guy?
You want to know why Matt doesn't have all his power, like why his radar senses, on the fritz and stuff. So,
yeah, it hits you a little more knowing how passionate he is right now. So much so that he's like ignoring his girlfriend to, go after, this mentor of his. And then as you're saying, Paul, so I know next issue, and I had read ahead, but next issue we get more into that of like, him trying to find out, how he gets this
flashbacks to training him when he was, first blinded and stuff.
Yeah.
Then we get a whole series of it later on. like 10 years later after this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that probably was 10 years later. And that was Romita Jr. art. I do like it, but I think I preferred the Miller Jansen art from this era.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I like Romita Jr. and I think
definitely.
I think Romita Jr. works well with the Frank Miller storytelling style for sure. But
yeah, I like Williamson inking him too. That was a good team on Daredevil.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So anything else for this one? I know we're coming up on the hour and a half mark here. Appreciate everybody hanging.
Terminator. Yeah, he kind of is like the Terminator, Bobby.
Darrell, we'll have to plan out, when we can do this next one. This was a lot of fun. Paul, thanks for joining us here.
No doubt, man. Appreciate it, guys. Always. I actually like this cover on this. Yeah, I was going to say this. So this is more like pure Miller art from this era.
Right.
Has that Dark Knight look to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So does this end? Is there more issues in this?
There is. This goes to 182, I believe. Yep.
Oh, okay. And then there's a third volume after this too.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And then there's the Born Again volume and the what were we just saying? The Daredevil origin story. What was it called?
Oh,
Man Without Fear.
Man Without Fear series. Yes. I picked up a nice hardcover of that recently, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
I got this weekend. Number one.
Oh, nice.
I think I got it. It says $2 on it, but
you got quite the stack at that show. It looked like pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I got this pretty good score. I felt like.
All right, guys. Just want to remind everybody too, if you guys are not following Darrell and Paul, make sure you do so. I put their information in the description below. We'll be back. We'll figure out a time when we break down at least the next 3 or 4 issues. I think this was a good amount of issues to kind of fit in here. So
these were 4 pretty like dense issues. There was kind of a lot going on.
Yeah. No, I think we made it work pretty well. If anybody has feedback, leave a comment in the comment section. If you like the layout that we did here with this, would love to know more of your thoughts on that, or if you have any other different ideas for kind of how we're breaking this stuff down. But we definitely want to try to continue to do chunks of issues at a time. So we'll see what we'll do next, but obviously we'll at least cover these next 3 or 4. So other than that, appreciate everybody who's hanging. If you're watching live here with us now, trying to think there's anything coming up otherwise. I don't know when the next stream will be, but keep an eye over on Instagram. We'll post whenever we do the next one. And until next time, we will talk to you guys later. Peace.